Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. This is Reading with Your Kids. We are beaming out to you and to the entire planet from the beautiful, book-loving neighborhood of Reedville, the loveliest neighborhood in all of Boston. We are so very honored and delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people from all across the globe who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in this mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, Audible, CastBox, YouTube. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. Real excited, Geoffrey McSkimming returns to Reading with Your Kids to celebrate book number 8 in his Phyllis Wong series. It's Phyllis Wong in the Lore of the Lighthouse. And later in the show, we'll have a listen back to a fun conversation we had with Barbara Brown celebrating her book, I Am Musical Adventures with Waffles. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Fart Boy and Reeky Dog, Dino Doom. Fantastic new graphic novel written by New York Times bestselling author Joan Holub, who's written over 200 amazing books for kids. It's school sleepover at the museum. What could go wrong? Well, how about this? A snack-fueled explosion of garbanzo beans and peanuts unleashes a stink so powerful it brings the dinosaurs back to life. Now, Fart Boy, Reeky Dog, and their friends are in the middle of a dino-sized disaster. They have to solve tricky riddles, find missing bones, and stop the stinkiest villain of all, Professor Gravy Pants. Because if they don't, the dinosaurs could take over. Or worse, they could become Dino Dinner. This action-packed graphic novel is bursting with friendships, adventure, and enough laughs to shake the museum walls. If your kids love superheroes, if they love dinosaurs, and if they love to laugh until they can't breathe, then Fart Boy and Reeky Dog Dino Doom is the book for you. Because sometimes the power to save the world comes from the unlikeliest place. Grab your copy today and get ready for a reading adventure that's truly dynamite. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by When Fred the Snake and Friends Learn the Chinese Zodiac and the Great Race, written by Dr. Peter Cotton. Hey, did you ever wonder why 2025 was called the Year of the Snake? Well, get ready because Fred the Snake and Friends are about to take you on an unforgettable journey into the story of the Chinese Zodiac and the legendary Great Race. When Fred, Purdy, and Jack meet their new friends Connor and Ellie at school, they discover a story filled with adventure, teamwork, and a little bit of mischief. 12 animals race to reach the heavenly gate. The clever rat, the strong ox, the brave tiger, the soaring dragon, the determined snake, and all their friends racing for their place in history. Kids will love the excitement of the race, and families will love discovering the traditions, values, and celebrations of Chinese New Year together. From delicious feasts to dazzling dragons and lion dancing, this story is a joyful celebration of culture, friendship, and learning. It's more than a story, it's a chance to explore the world and celebrate what makes us all unique. Discover When Fred the Snake and Friends Learn the Chinese Zodiac and the Great Race today. Because every great story we share with our kids brings us a little closer together. Joining us, Fred. I said I woke up the Zoom lady. I really woke her up. Join us right now from Sydney in the great country of Australia. Almost said state. Our guest is returning. He's one of my favorite guests. He's the author of one of my favorite series, the Phyllis Wong series. Here to celebrate Phyllis Wong and the lore of the Lighthouse. Please welcome back to Reading with Your Kids, Geoffrey McSkimming. Geoffrey, how are you?
I'm well, thanks, Jed. Thank you so much for having me back. It's lovely to be here again, really.
I'm really excited to have you back. Boy, oh boy, Phyllis Wong. This is book 8 in the series.
It is, that's right. Number 8, Phyllis Wong and the Lure of the Lighthouse. And it's a cracking story. It really is. It's a big one, yeah.
Yeah. And you brought back some of my favorite characters. We see Clement again, and Mrs. Lowerblast, and Daisy, and of course the wonderful Phyllis.
Yeah, Phyllis, and Barry Inglis, Chief Inspector Barry Inglis, her friend and man someone who helps her out, or she helps him out more than he helps her out. I think she's pretty brilliant. Phyllis is pretty brilliant. I love her. She's so resourceful, so magical, and the whole thing about Phyllis Wong is, and it's repeated in all the books, because being a magician, she's a stage magician, she's a magician, illusionist. She does all of that. She's based on my dear wife, who's also a stage magician and illusionist. But Phyllis...
Wait a minute. I don't mean to interrupt you, Geoffrey. I'm sorry.
No, please.
Sue Ann is not just the stage magician. She is the First Lady of Magic of Australia. I'd say the world, but,
She is. That's lovely. Thank you so much. Yes, she is. She's certainly my First Lady of Magic. And, it's wonderful. And Phyllis, Sue Ann is behind Phyllis, really. Phyllis is based on Sue Ann. Her being married to a magician like Sue Ann, I've learned so much, and I've learned that magicians are resourceful, and Phyllis is resourceful, and magicians have to think outside the box. They have to think in different ways to normal people. I don't mean that she's abnormal, but you know what I mean, normal people. Because they have to be able to, if they're performing a little feat of magic or a trick or an illusion or something, they have to be able to anticipate, for example, what the audience might see or do, or how the audience member might react. So magicians have to think outside the box and have to be quick and ready and resourceful. And Phyllis Wong she demonstrates that in all these stories. She gets out of some huge scrapes and some terribly dire predicaments and things that could threaten the existence of the world in some of the books. Yeah. So she's pretty, I love Phyllis. She's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I dare say that you have to do some thinking out of the box as an author, especially as an author of a mystery.
Yes. Oh, yes. I love mysteries. I read lots of mysteries. I read lots of old mysteries from Victorian times, Edwardian times, because they were such fun. They were such, and mysteries are fun. They're fun to write. They're fun to construct. It's fun, as you say, you have to think outside the box. You have to always stay not just one step ahead of the reader. You have to stay quite a few steps ahead of the reader so that the reader can't guess where the story is going, or who the villain is, or what is going to happen, what is going to be stolen, or if it's going, you have to work out all those things and set it up so that the reader will come along on the journey without guessing it before you want them to guess it. And also to get to a stage in the story at the end where they think, that got me, that really got me. And so that they don't think, that was a bit disappointing. You have to really deliver with it. But mysteries are great. In fact, I'll tell you here, I'm going to say it first. You hear it first here. Working right at the moment on a collection of interrelated short stories. And they're mystery stories. They're humorous mystery stories. They're not Phyllis Wong stories, but they're some really cool young characters. They're for young readers and young at heart readers. And they're all mysteries. So I'm working on that, and we're hoping that will be out for Christmas.
Great.
When it comes, it's something. But mysteries are wonderful. I love them. They're a real challenge, and they're really satisfying to write and to read.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you ever, because one of the things we do in magic, of course, is misdirection. And we intentionally try to get somebody to think that way when we are hiding something this way. Do you do that with your writing? Do you sprinkle in little hints that you think is like gonna make the reader go, "Oh, I know what's gonna happen," and then boom, they don't?
I always try and do that, multiple times really in the stories, in the novels. You try and you put red herrings in. Red herrings are wonderful. They're false clues. So you might set something up and the reader will think, oh, that's going to lead me to who the villain is, or that's going to lead me to the scene of the crime, when in fact it doesn't. You set these things up and then you put the real thing in, and you do it in such a way that you misdirect. Yeah, you use misdirection in a literary way, so that they can't, that they don't anticipate what you're doing. But yeah, it's a lot. There are quite a few similarities between writing any sort of fiction, but especially writing mysteries, and performing and constructing magic tricks. There's a lot of similarities. You're setting something up. You're presenting it on the page. You're performing it on the stage or in the living room or wherever you're performing. You're bringing it through to the climax. You're bringing it through to the reveal in the magic trick. So there are a lot of similarities between writing and magic. And that's why I think when Sue-Ann and I met, we just clicked, because I'm the writer, she's the magician, and we have these similar ways of thinking, but very different ways of thinking. It's I love my life, Jed. I love writing, and I love being with who I'm with, and everything's great. And Phyllis emerges from that. I think the Phyllis Wong mysteries emerge from the wonderful place that I find myself in at this stage of my life.
That's really wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about the story that kids are going to experience in Phyllis Wong and the lore of the Lighthouse.
Yes. Well, it's the 8th book, as you said, and it follows on from the previous 7 books, but in particular, there's a thread that came about in the 3rd book. I have to look up and see which one. This one, Phyllis Wong and the Waking of the Wizard. There's some characters in this book who have sort of disappeared in the interim, but they re-emerge in Phyllis Wong and the Lure of the Lighthouse. And one particular character who's a very, very bad character, who in this book he sets up the lure of this lighthouse. This lighthouse is it's a real lighthouse. There are links through this lighthouse to the great writer Robert Louis Stevenson, who wrote Treasure Island, and who wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and who wrote a lot of the great stories in his time. So there's a little link there. It gets back to what we were saying about all these little things that you set up in the stories to lead the readers on into avenues that where it might go or where it might not go. So Phyllis has to, with her friends Clement, who's a wonderful he's slightly younger than her. He's 3 years and 10 days. No, 1 year and 10 days younger than her. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up. Yeah. And he's there. And also their friend, Liesl Cunbross, who emerged in this book. She's in a lot of the books, but this book, Phyllis Wong and the Vanishing Emeralds. I can't remember the titles. Phyllis Wong and the Vanishing Emeralds. This is where she really, Liesl became a real member of the little team. In the previous book, she was in them, but she was quite an enemy of Phyllis and Clement. But she comes on, and so she's in this book as well. And Phyllis has to get to this lighthouse to find what is there. It's a lure. The villain has set it up so that Phyllis is drawn in. She has to get to the lighthouse before it's too late, because it's all to do with her great-grandfather, Wallace Wong, Conjurer of Wonder. Now, he was one, as you know, as people know who've read the stories from the earlier things, Wallace Wong was one of the world's greatest magicians, And in 1932, he actually disappeared on stage. He disappeared, never to be seen again, in public, at least. But he disappeared, and he pioneered the greater magic, because Phyllis, yes, she's a magician, she's a stage magician, but as well as being a stage magician, she is also a transitor. Wallace Wong has discovered the world of transiting, which is being able to find pockets of time where time opens up, and here you can travel back into different eras, which is the main impetus of the Phyllis Wong mysteries. She not only performs stage magic, but she goes through the greater magic to visit different eras in time and to solve mysteries. She goes back to Shakespeare's time. She goes back to Edgar Allan Poe's time. In the seventh book, Phyllis Wong and the Crumpled Stranger, she meets Mary Shelley. There's a bit of a literary bent in all these books. She meets Mary Shelley, who this wonderful young woman, 18 years old, and she wrote the first real science fiction book, which of course was Frankenstein, and she wrote that. So Phyllis, there's a mystery about that story, about the writing of that story, and Phyllis manages to solve that as well in that story. Or does she solve it? We're not sure, but it's all up in the air. But yeah, so Phyllis is moving through the world and through the worlds of transiting and solving these problems. And in this book, she goes to different times, several times during the book, and there's some strange new characters, some really eccentric characters. There's a combustibilities practitioner who can't control his explosive tendencies and has to blow things up whenever he can. But there's all sorts of strange characters in the books. They're a hoot. They're fun and they're suspenseful and they're mysteries. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I love about Phyllis Wong and also about your Cairo Gym series is the language. You introduce kids to some great language that's been around forever, but that we don't hear that often. And so, was that something? I'm guessing that was something you did intentionally. That you wanted to introduce these things to kids.
Absolutely, I love language. I love words. We often play Scrabble. We just recently got a mega Scrabble set that's got like 3 times the amount of letters and a huge set. And we were just playing yesterday and we came across 3 new words that we found we could have. I love finding new words. I love words. The language in the Phyllis Wong stories and the Cairo Gym stories it's rich, but it's not inaccessible. It's not hard for a reader to grasp what I'm writing, because I use the language in context. Mm-hmm. So, the meaning around the words gives them, even if the reader doesn't get the exact meaning of the word, they get the sense of the meaning of the word. But I love the rich language. One thing I did, this year for me is 35 years of being a published author. The first Cairo Gym book came out 35 years ago on the 15th of June, 1991, which I don't feel old at all. I still feel so young. But one of the things I did before I wrote these books, before 35 years ago, was I worked professionally as an actor for 5 years. Now, I was a terrible actor. I was really bad. But the good thing was I was exposed when I was on stage and in these plays, I was exposed night after night to great language, to great words. I was in Shakespeare productions, and, to hear the great language that the bard himself wrote, that's a gift. I mean, I still love Shakespeare, and the man who made up more words in the English language than any other person. He was phenomenal, to use a word that is used a lot now, but he really was. But so language has always been there with me, the richness of language. And I think it's important too for younger readers and younger people to be exposed to have a good vocabulary, because one of the things that's changed in all the time that I've been published is that when I started publishing, there was no internet. There was none of that. And we had the Cairo Gym Club. We had a club here in Australia, and you would join up the club. It was a free club, a fan club, and you would get 4 times a year, you would get a newsletter, you would get postcards whenever a new book was coming out. You'd have all these different things. We had merchandise, we had badges and water bottles and backpacks, all sorts of Cairo Gym things. And it was enormous. We had over 4,000 kids in it in the end. The publishers had to stop it because it was just too expensive for all the mail outs because they were all done physically. We didn't have the internet in those days. So in those days it was very different. Readers were different to what they are now because they didn't have the distraction of the internet and, of emails and things like that. If you wanted to write to an author, and I used to get the most wonderful letters, you would send a letter off. You would actually write it, put it in the mailbox, and it would be mailed to you. And then I'd respond mail. But now people just send very quickly. They will write an email. And often, it's terrible. Often people don't think about what they're writing. They just whack something off. It'll be full of mistakes. And I think the attention span, I'm not imagining this. It's proven. The attention span of people now has diminished so much over the last, I'm just talking 35 years, but certainly over a longer period than that. And so a lot of readers find it difficult to persevere to finish a 60,000 word novel or a 30,000 or a 40,000 word novel. They find it hard because they're getting their instantaneous grabs on social media. So I think language is an enriching thing, and I think we've got to keep it alive. And I still am in touch, or they're in touch with me, readers, kids who were reading the Cairo Gym books when they first came out, and the Phyllis Wong books as well, of course, but especially with Cairo Gym all that way ago. And they've grown up now, and they've got kids of their own, and they're reading the kids. As I say, I don't feel old, but they're reading these stories to these kids themselves. And a lot of these kids who read them, I think, really responded to the rich language. A number of them went on to become lawyers and doctors, and there's archaeologists. I know of one archaeologist. She became an archaeologist through Cairo Gym, who is an archaeologist. And they became physicists, and all these things. I think they valued. One of the things they valued was language and not being talked down to, not being. I won't make my books cheap and nasty. There's certain words that will never appear in a Geoffrey McSkimming book, whereas other writers for young people will go for the low denominator just to get kids sniggering. I won't do that. The books are still funny, but you can have a level of sophistication. You treat your young readers with respect. Treat them as humans. They're just shorter. That's all. They haven't been around as long, but they're just as important as a grown-up. I've always thought that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I love about the language and the fact that some of the kids, maybe they're not going to get the context, but what a great reason to go to your parent or an adult that you love and say, hey, what's this, the kerfuffle? I don't know what that word is. What is it? And It's a great way to start conversations. And I think both Cairo Gym and Phyllis Wong are great series to co-read with your kids and then come together on the way to soccer practice or class or ballet or at the dinner table and have conversations about what's going on in the stories and about the language.
That's right. It keeps the family unit together when parents can read with their kids. It's so important. Yeah. In fact, the reason a couple of years ago, only a few short years ago, that I brought out the 19th novel in the Cairo Gym Chronicles, which is called Cairo Gym and the Portal of Peristophanes, was because prior to that I'd left it up in the air. Cairo Gym and Doris the macaw, they just disappeared. And I deliberately left it open. But I had a letter, an email from a mother who had been reading the books to her kids, with her kids. And she wrote me, and this is the reason I had to write this last one. She wrote me this letter saying, we love your books, blah, blah, blah. We love the books. We just finished reading Cairo Gym and the Astracals of Angkor, which was the second last book, as it turned out. We just finished reading that. And I put my kids to bed and they just cried themselves to sleep because I'd left it open. And I thought, what have I done? What have I done? That responsibility, I thought I've let those kids down. I've got to bring Cairo Gym back. These poor kids cried to sleep. And she'd been reading the books with her kids. So I did. So, it's great to have that interaction with the readers and the parents of the readers. But we have a responsibility to share the stories with the readers in a responsible and caring way. But I agree with you. It's so wonderful when parents can sit down, a parent or parents can sit down and read with their kids and explore words. And if, as you say, kerfuffle, it's a word. If the parent doesn't know what the word means, they can go and look it up with the kids, and they sharing in the learning experience.
Yeah. Introduce the kids to that thing that they haven't met yet, that dictionary thing. It's, it's a wonderful tool.
It is a wonderful tool, yeah.
Hey, I'm curious. You were very open about, Phyllis being based on your beautiful and talented wife, Sue Ann Webster. How did that character come to be? Was it one night? Did you sit down and say, I love my wife so much and she's so talented, I'm going to create a character about her? Or did you have an aha moment where you went, I can share Sue Ann with the world through this story?
There were a lot of moments, Jed, and they took place over quite a period of time. What happened was I'd finished the Cairo Gym books, and a publisher came to me through my agent and said, would Geoffrey be interested in writing a new series, blah, blah, blah. And so I thought about it, and I had Sue Ann and I hadn't actually met physically. I was working on a magazine for kids, and suddenly this letter came out of the blue from Sue Ann, who's always been resourceful, and she'd done a writing course, and she said, look, I've been a magician for 30 years. Would you be interested in me writing a series of magic columns, magic tricks and columns for the magazine? So this inquiry was handed on to me because I had rekindled. I'd started exploring my childhood interest in magic for something that I wrote, for a performance piece that I wrote called The Startling Tale of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, which was a retelling of Hamlet in verse with additional dialogue by William Shakespeare. And so I was doing this, and it was interlaced with magic tricks. So I'd rekindled my interest in it. And then this letter from Sue Ann came. So we gradually met through correspondence. And at the same time, the publishers had got in touch with me saying, would Geoffrey like to do a new series? So I thought, yeah, I'll do a series about a young magician who solves mysteries. And having met Sue Ann and got, as I say, over time, got to know her, I thought this young magician would be great if she was a girl, because I didn't want to have a boy, because there was this other series, you may have heard about it. It was 6 or 7 books and set in a place called Hogwarts or something. I can't remember. But anyway, there was this other series and it was a boy. And I thought, I'm going to do another boy series. The world's got too many boy books. Well, no, that's not true. But I just didn't. So I made her this girl and I called her Phyllis Wong. And she is sort of an Asian European character because I was intrigued by the old magic of a magician whose name was Theo Bamberg. And he came from he was a Dutch magician and he was profoundly deaf. And he came from a family of magicians. And so he wanted to perform magic. And his father said to him, because you can't hear, you can't speak, why don't you perform in another, as a foreign character so that then you don't have to speak. So he adopted this character of an Asian character and he called himself Okito. And Theo Bamberg, Okito, invented so many of the great tricks of the early 20th century that Phyllis actually has inherited from her great-grandfather, Wallace Wong, Conjurer of Wonder. A lot of these tricks are in these books, and a lot of the tricks we actually have. Sue Ann has them, and I was collecting them before Sue Ann and I met, and since we've been together, she's got more. And she performs with a lot of the Okito magic. So over time, Phyllis started to develop, and over time, as I got to know Sue Ann's attributes and some of her personality traits found their ways into Phyllis. Phyllis is very determined. She's very forthright. She's very definitive. And that's what Sue Ann's like too. And so, yeah. So when a character, you always you base characters on people you know or people you've heard about. Sometimes very closely, sometimes just at a remote distance. But it always happens over time. They develop. And it's been 14 years since the first Phyllis book came out, 14 years this year. So it has happened over a long period of time. That was the first book. And there it is, Phyllis Wong and the Secrets of Mr. Okito. So I used Okito's name for one of the characters in this book. He's not based on Theo Bamberg, the magician Okito, but he's based on, a lot of the magic is based on the magic that he did. So yeah, so Phyllis gradually became developed.
Mm-hmm.
Before I got to know Sue Ann, and she's still being developed. She's still showing me things, Phyllis, showing me traits, showing me ways of thinking, ways of getting out of scrapes, as she continues.
Yeah. What's the most surprising thing that Phyllis has shown you?
Oh, there's been a lot, I think. One of the most surprising things is, I don't know. That's a flooring question. One of the most surprising, look, her vulnerability surprises me, because even though she's strong,
Mm-hmm.
she's still only, 12, 13, 14, whatever age she is still vulnerable. And so that surprises me, because I think, she's going to go in and do this, but then a little emergence of uncertainty comes about in her character that I haven't planned. So it surprises me. A little obstacle might be put in her path that I haven't planned. And that's the wonderful thing about writing. You can plan a story out so far,
Mm-hmm.
but you're always surprised because a story takes different twists. Every time I write a story of this length, this is, I think, about 64,000 words, but it reads very quickly. Sue Ann read it very quickly when it was finished, and as it was being written. One of the surprising things is, whenever I'm writing a story of this length, I get to a stage where I think I'm coming towards the end, but with every single one I've done, I get about three different possibilities for endings.
Oh.
And that is one of the very hardest things about writing for me, is working out which will be the best ending, which will be the most satisfying, the most intriguing, the most surprising, the most explosive, if you like. So there's always surprises that come up, and often those surprises come about through character and through the character of Phyllis.
Yeah. Great. Well, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Phyllis Wong and the Lore of the Lighthouse, find out more about Cairo Jim, and find out more about you.
Well, we've got the websites. We've got phylliswong.com for Phyllis. We've got cairojim.com for Cairo Jim, and 9 Diamonds Press with the 9 numeral, 9diamondspress.com, which is the publisher. Mm-hmm. They've got all the stories. Sue Ann's got a magic book out called Astounding Quick Stick Magic Tricks, and that's published by 9 Diamonds Press as well. That's got permutations for countless routines, magical routines, and she's illustrated that as well. In fact, on the topic of that, she's also done the covers for these books and made the trailers. On our website, you can find links to the trailers, phylliswong.com. There's all the trailers, small trailers, short trailers, to give you a taste of what the stories are about. Same with Cairo Jim. There's trailers there, and there'll be a trailer for the collection of mystery stories that are coming out for Christmas. They'll be very mysterious.
Well, I hope you won't be mysterious with the new stories, and I hope you'll come back to celebrate those later in the year.
I would love to do that, yes, because it's something different. I've never done a collection of short stories together. I've written lots of short stories, published in magazines, but in one volume, interrelated short stories and funny short stories, and I'm really having a ball with it. They're really coming in a nice fashion, I think.
That's wonderful. And I just want to give Sue Ann's book a plug. It is a wonderful magic book, and one of the things I was very impressed with is that in addition to the tricks and whatnot, she talks to kids a lot about being respectful to the audience, being respectful to themselves, how a magician can carry themselves. And that's something that's missing from other kind of how-to books. And I think it's very, very important. And you can hear Sue Ann on just on our website, so on our podcast. So check that out. We've had a great time revisiting with our friend, the author of Phyllis Wong and the Lore of the Lighthouse. Our guest has been Geoffrey McSkimming. Geoffrey, thanks so much for being back with us.
Thank you so much, Jed, and it's wonderful, and I love what you're doing, and yeah, thanks for the support. Much appreciated.
Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. Joining us right now from the beautiful Garden State of New Jersey, our guest is here today to celebrate her beautiful picture book. It's called I Am Musical, Adventures with Waffles. Please welcome to the show, Barbara Brown. Hey, Barbara, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
Delighted to have you on. I love the title of this book, I Am Musical. The colors, I'm looking at the website, the colors are great. I love music. I love reading. I think that this is a perfect book.
Yeah, it's been a really exciting project to work on. And, based on my real dog, Waffles, which has been really fun too. So there's a lot of really exciting pieces to the book, and I think that children have really been enjoying it.
So tell us a little bit about the story we're going to be reading with our kids when we sit down with I Am Musical.
Yeah, so as a elementary music teacher, I realized that by the time they get to about grade 5, they're not really as engaged with music as they are when they're super little. As a mom, you put your kids in these mommy and me music classes, and they just go crazy, right? The maracas, the singing, the dancing, and it's such a beautiful time. And then, as they get older, I think they get, a little bit embarrassed. Their self-esteem starts to go down a little bit, and they start to think that unless they play an instrument or they're super involved in a specific music community, that, they're not really musical and their opinion is really not that valid. So I Am Musical is the story of a dog named Waffles and her best friend, Corgi, whose name is Crouton. And her best friend, Crouton, is asking her, are you musical? And she's like, absolutely. I am so musical. It's ridiculous. But she can't sing. She can't dance. She can't compose anything. And Crouton the whole time is like, how are you musical at all? And she just describes to him how, she loves to share her music. She loves to learn about it. She enjoys it. And it's more about how music makes her feel. And so Crouton realizes that he's musical at the end of the story too. So it's really aimed to help children really regain their confidence in their musical opinion, and to just remind them that being musical is a part of just being human instead of something that they might think is something they're not a part of.
I love that. As you were speaking, I had a little flashback to when I was in elementary school, and my instrument was the drums, and I had an amazing orchestra teacher who was actually a member of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and she was a percussionist. And our little school, there wasn't a lot of appreciation for the arts in our little elementary school. So at one point, the school band was drums, trumpet, and clarinet.
Wow.
It was very so the teacher our teacher Mrs. Fleck, she made an all-town band and she brought together, and I have trouble following rules, and so I wasn't really big on reading music. I love to improvise, and so when we got in this all-town band, people kind of looked at me like, you're not any good, you're not following the music. And, but there was this one song we played, a rock song, back in the 60s. And, I remember, in this all-time band, everybody's kind of pushing me to the back. Like, no, you can't do this. And then Mrs. Fleck came up and she said, I want you there. And you just hold the cymbal. Jed, go crazy. And I was rocking out, just improvising, and she really helped me appreciate that music is just something to be loved and felt.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like that story is true of so many small schools and education institutions, around our country. And, it's a shame sometimes the arts aren't really as well supported financially in our schools. And so that's also a reason why I created the book. It serves really well as like a classroom resource for teachers. The website that it's associated with, adventuresofwaffles.com, has, lesson plans for teachers. It has coloring pages for little kids. And so there's really an opportunity for teachers to reignite their students' excitement while also giving parents the opportunity to really support that at home too.
Yeah. I think that that's really genius, because when you think about it, I think I think music can really enhance learning, not just learning how to play an instrument, but music in the classroom. When you think about, I still remember jingles from commercials that I heard almost 100 years ago on TV for different products that I never used, but I just heard there was this a rug cleaning company, and their telephone number was Andrew 8000, and it was like, how many cookies did Andrew eat? Andrew 8000, and I mean that is literally 60 years ago. Right. And I remember it. And so I'm thinking that, wow, if you incorporate music into the classroom, maybe some of that mundane kind of memorizing stuff that kids hate doing might become a little bit easier.
Right. It's definitely an asset. And I think that people also forget in that same way that music is everywhere. And sometimes kids just think that music only exists in their music classroom or with their ensembles, but it's the music playing in the doctor's office to help you relax. It's the song that your star pitcher comes out to the field in because it pumps them up. It's all of these things, and there are so many ways to help your children really encourage their musicality. It's your 7th grade daughter who is maybe going through something and feeling a little alone or whatever it is, and it's asking her, Mom's going to the gym, can you make me a playlist of your favorite songs? I need something new to listen to. And maybe that is the one thing that could really help translate how she's feeling or give you a little bit of insight of what she finds exciting. And it's really interesting because with social media and, cancel culture and everything, these youth have so much power in what music becomes famous, what music becomes popular with the TikToks and all of that stuff. And so they have a lot of responsibility as well in terms of what should we be listening to, what's important, what is the message you want to get across. And so I'm hoping that this book will really help students from an early age feel as though their responsibility in our culture to fortify a music that makes best sense to them translates over time and really helps them over time to feel confident.
One of the things that was important to me, not only reading with my kids, but it was important for me as my kids got older and got into middle school and high school to listen to music with my kids and to talk about it. And I learned very early on from a very wise teacher not to try to ban anything. There's certainly lots of music I didn't want my kids listening to, but I realized that if I tried to ban it outright, they were going to listen to it anyways. And so there was a way to say, I don't want this song in my house. I think it's disrespectful, whatever. But at least have the conversation with the kids about why you feel that way. And can you talk a little bit more about that and just the value of, we celebrate the value of reading with our kids. Talk a little bit about the value of listening to music with your kids and talking about it.
Absolutely. Music is one of our senses, right? It's one of our senses that jumpstarts memories and how we feel about things. And so just for your example, for all of that music that's so inappropriate, I'm sure we can even remember being 10 years old and singing along with something that's completely inappropriate. But sometimes, I mean, there's a lot to be spoken for passive listening and listening to something for the rhythm and the beat, and maybe sitting down with your kids and being like, okay, well, why does this speak to you? And then they might realize, well, it pumps me up for soccer, or, it's what everyone is listening to. And I like being able to sing along to something with my best friends on our way to Dunkin' Donuts.
Mm-hmm.
So, having those conversations as well. But, just personally, my mom passed away when I was in high school, and I kind of had to re-meet my father as just being a person rather than being like a couple of my parents. And in doing so, one night it was really late and we were watching the Eagles documentary on Netflix. And it was one of the bands that him and my mom really enjoyed together. And watching it and just learning their story really got me really interested in their music. And, I was like, wow, these old guys are like really cool. And, so we watched it together and it was super late. And it was just, it was one of those times where we were like, okay, this is something we have in common. And then later on, years later, we went to an Eagles concert together. And it wasn't until I was getting married that I asked my dad, I said, hey, would you want to dance to Hotel California at the wedding? And he was like, absolutely. And I think that music for us, my dad is completely tone deaf, cannot sing anything. Horribly untalented singer. But really being able to do that together and, have a piece where we were able to remember my mom, but all of a sudden it became ours as well. I think that those moments are really, really special, and to do what you can with your kids to create those as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My daughter went through, when she was in middle and high school, she wanted very much to get into the music business, and she did. But one of the ways she was doing it was by working with bands when they came up. These particular bands would be playing stadiums down south, and they'd come up north, and they'd have to play in little tiny churches and depend on volunteer help. And so we would help out. And it was such a fantastic way for her and I to bond and to come together and to share super moments that I wouldn't have in spend time with her that most dads don't get to spend that much time with their teenage daughters. So it was really, really special.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I studied ethnomusicology in undergrad at Columbia, and when you learn about, it's basically the study of music in terms of anthropology, right? So the way in which music functions as a system of culture. And in that same way that you experience those things with your daughter and kind of learned a whole new part of a business or a discipline that she had never learned before, cultures all over the world have been making music a part of their ceremonies, a part of their grieving, a part of their celebration, their communication. And so sometimes it feels like we're a little overstimulated with what we think our parenthood should look like, that we kind of forget that there are these things that we genuinely just enjoy with our kids, just like you said, seeing music, or it doesn't even have to be going to a concert, but it's, going to a museum and seeing your favorite piece and being like, what is this? What song does this make you think of? Or, you choose what you want to listen to on the radio on our long drive to your volleyball tournament. And what conversations does that bring up?
Mm-hmm. I don't think enough people think about music in conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I know kids are having conversations about music all the time.
Right.
And I think it's really valuable for us to have conversations. And I would encourage parents not to be judgmental, but just to have open conversations. And like you said earlier, what is it about this song? Is it the lyrics? Is it the beat? Is it the rhythm? What's speaking to you through this song?
Right. And it also helps with, communication skills, right? Being able to say, what does this make me feel? So that way later on when they're going through something and they don't know how they feel, it might help them identify that. Yeah. And, celebrating the little progress, right? So it's not just celebrating your child who was the best violinist in North Jersey, right? It's celebrating your child who was able to finally sing along to a song that has a lot of words, or, the small things, and really encouraging their musicality that way, but really reminding them that everyone is musical and that your opinion is absolutely valid. Even if, Taylor Swift is huge right now, probably one of the biggest people in the world. And there are a lot of people who kind of like to be like, oh, well, her music is just, kids pop and stuff like that. And, that's also not cool, right? Mm-hmm. So whatever you value also means that whatever other people value is important too. So in doing so, I think it teaches a lot of empathy.
Yeah. What's the expression? Don't yuck someone's yum.
Right. Exactly.
Hey, you were talking about ethnomusicology, and that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about in my notes. I'm like, what in the world is that? Yeah. But you're talking a little bit about music and culture, and I know I haven't done a lot of travel. I've done some travel through Latin America, and have some knowledge of cultures from the past. And we talk about this culture. Oh, this is the music from this part of the world. That's the music from that part of the world. Do we have that here in the United States? Because we have all these kind of genres blowing up, and everything seems people just listen to this music over here or that music. And, and if you're listening to something on Spotify, then Spotify sends you down a certain rabbit hole as opposed to, I was lucky. I growing up in Boston, we had a really eclectic rock station that just played everything. And, so you'd hear reggae and acid rock and the Eagles and all that stuff all played together. Are we losing some of that musical identity here in the States, do you think?
Personally, I think that even every community has their own musical culture, right? And to say for the entire country is a little bit tough as well. I think that in this age, there has been quite the development of technology, obviously. And with our streaming services, there has almost been an algorithm created for our music, right? So, why does Pandora send you to that song on that radio station kind of situation? Like you were saying, the rabbit holes of Spotify. And it's almost like we were saying before that there are other people kind of controlling where we go with our music and what we have access to. What does it say that there are some artists that won't put their music on Spotify because of their inability to create profit? And what does that say for how they're listened to, their audience, and how that grows, right? So there's a lot dictating that in the same way. But as far as our musical culture, I think that it's important to remember that everyone brings their own culture. And when you start to kind of mute or numb people's ability to express their own culture via these streaming services, it becomes a problem. So when teaching, I think world music, even that title becomes an issue as well, because it creates an otherness, right? When you're talking about music, there's, American music, and then there's Indian music and in India. And that's really not true, because there are a lot of Indian Americans and their culture is here as well. So in doing so, I would really encourage, especially teachers in the classroom, that when you are teaching about Indian music, Cuban music, I'm Cuban, to see if there are any students in your classroom that resonate with that and have them speak on it, rather than teaching your class about a music that you might not be completely familiar with. I know one of my students, she was so excited when we were talking about Ravi Shankar, who is, a really, really famous Indian musician. And it was really exciting because he was one of the first people to bring Indian music to mainstream by teaching John Lennon how to play. And so all of those things, all of those connections, and really not allowing your students to feel as though their musical connections cannot be heard is super important. And I think that in doing so, it will really fortify our culture.
Yeah. Hey, I Am Musical, The Adventures of Waffles. It's a great debut book for you. Have you caught the author bug? Are you looking to write a series?
Yeah, so Adventures of Waffles is going to be the series title, and Waffles is going to go on several different adventures. You know, listening to landscape musics, you know, how do just the sounds of your environment create a song, create music, and what does that feel like? How do different people take in music, right? So people with hearing aids, people who may not be completely vocal, all of those things. How do they consume music? People who may not have access to the internet or things of that sort. How do they consume music? So I think that the Adventures of Waffles have a lot to go see still, and I hope that people will be excited to join us for the ride.
Yeah. You mentioned folks with hearing aids, how they experience music. I worked in a school before I met my beautiful wife. I worked in a school for kids with severe developmental disabilities, and lots of our kids were deaf. And my job was to integrate them or give them opportunities to integrate with quote unquote typical kids. And so we brought a group of kids in from a neighboring public school and brought our kids in, and we brought the brass quintet from Berklee College of Music. And a company in Boston donated a bazillion balloons, big helium-filled balloons, so that all the kids could experience hearing the music through the vibrations in the balloons. And it was,
oh my God, it's amazing.
It was a really fun experience for the kids. It's such a wonderful memory that I have of helping to put that together.
Right. And there's so many amazing things we can do with music, right? It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I'm curious, are you creating any music yourself that we should check out?
So currently I just had a baby 3 weeks ago. And
so you're a little bit busy.
Yeah. So I have a 1.5-year-old and a 3-week-old. So, absolutely I was creating music, but honestly, my passion really is to teach music, and to just, watch little kids just go crazy with the maracas and singing. They think that I'm the best singer they've ever heard. Of course. And I mean, I really can't get a better audience than that. So I think I'm going to keep doing that, but you can, absolutely follow Adventures of Waffles on Instagram. And yeah, so excited.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids. Will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. This episode made you smile or gave you something to think about? Please consider sharing a link to the show with someone you love. Leave a 5-star review and subscribe wherever you find your favorite shows. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Geoffrey McSkimming. Please be sure to check out Phyllis Wong in the Lore of the Lighthouse. Also want to thank our listen back guest, Barbara Brown. Be sure to check out I Am Musical Adventures with Waffles. I want to thank my team, Chris Doherty, Jackson Sotelera. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so very much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better, more empathetic and caring place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.